Good morning and welcome to Refreshing Viewpoints. I'm your host, Sharon Sellers Clark, and this is our pilot episode, so thanks for joining us. I'd like to introduce the panel, Daniel Kunkel and Laura McKinley. Daniel, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio. My dad was a Southern Southern Baptist preacher that moved us down to Georgia whenever I was 4. Um, Normal childhood. Grew up with a dad as a pastor. My mom was the principal of my school. Um, and then whenever I was 17, I was in the Savannah Mall and got scouted by a talent agency that moved me to LA whenever I was 18. And just kind of I moved out there with Elite Model and Talent Management and Wilhelmina Models, which was the two agencies that signed me and moved me out there when I was 18. And going from a strict Christian upbringing in Southeast Georgia to LA by yourself with no parents was a stark contrast, like a very big difference
I'm
from
sure.
what I was used to. So, things got crazier, but obviously, like you kind of go there, it messes with you a little bit. You get body image issues, you get like personal complexes and stuff from just like the fake plastic world that they kind of create around you and the environment that comes with it. Drugs are something that they promote,
Wow.
um, mainly cocaine to keep you thin, and they pay for your rehab. I mean, it's just from what I was used to going to there was kind of a crazy transition.
So you touched a lot about on a topic today that we're going to talk about,
Hmm.
being transformed by trouble. So I'm going to come back to you in a sec so we
Okay.
can explore these difficult times
Okay.
that you had while you're out there.
Yeah.
Laura, tell us about yourself.
I am from Blackshear, Georgia, which is not too far from Brunswick. Grew up here. Um, Went to the University of Florida. I can't say that too loud around here. But and then went into banking when I got through with college. Went to the Atlanta market and was up there about 25 years or so, and then came back to this area and have been in banking about 30 years. Now I'm in the credit union industry, but I was the president of a small community bank during the financial downturn
Mm.
and lost my job and had to rebuild and saw a lot of devastation to a lot of my customers and that kind of thing.
So you're another person who's been transformed by
That's
trouble. I can't think of anyone probably who has not been transformed by trouble. I mean, it's just a part of life that we all have trouble. Daniel, tell us more now. You moved to LA when you
Mhm.
were 18 and you didn't have your support system, basically your family.
Yeah.
And so you had to depend on the kindness of strangers.
Well, it kind of went from where I was, like I was required to be at church every time the door was open. Was the pastor's family, so I had a
Mhm.
reserved seat in the front. If I was 5 minutes late, I was grounded to the next Sunday. I had 7 a.m. devotions every day before school. So it went from a really strict Christian upbringing to in the middle of LA with no parental guidance
Mhm.
or rules and paying me way too much than what an 18-year-old would have paid, what you should pay
Mhm.
somebody that age. And then I just got mixed up with the wrong crowd of people.
So I'm kind of curious how you went from such a strict, structured environment out to LA. I'm surprised that, I mean, did you rebel against your parents and just say, I'm going,
Yeah.
or were they supportive of you going?
Well, my mom was, I guess, as supportive as a mom can be. She's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the enabler, like love you to death kind of mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my dad, they were not full on supportive about it, but I was 18. What are they going to tell me? They signed a
Okay.
contract. They paid for my apartment. They gave me a car. So what are you gonna? You
The
can't.
modeling agency did all
Yeah,
this.
they couldn't make
Okay.
me stay. So, um, yeah, and I went there and I just kind of got ran into the wrong crowd of people, or not ran into the wrong crowd of people. I just started going out, and whenever you go out to the bars and stuff like that, like, you know, it's just you meet a type of crowd that is gonna do drugs and whatever else. Moved. It's not like it all happened all at once. It gradually kind of grew where you start smoking weed, you do this, whatever else, and then you kind of start letting your guard down and you get more comfortable with accepting stuff. To where it went on to where I had a full-on heroin addiction.
Mm.
And I went to rehab 5 times. They paid for it every time. Um, and you just do it because they want you to look a certain way. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess you kind of fill drugs in where the food would be. I don't
Okay.
know, that kind of
Okay.
thing.
So how did it transform you? You've made it back here.
I credit that to God.
Okay.
Kind of where I came from, my roots,
Mhm.
getting back to like faith and strength and praying and finding God and whatever kind of darkness you're in, kind of thing.
So you hit a bottom that when you
I
looked
thought
around, that's what was left?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I'd hit rock bottom several different times, and then I realized I could keep getting lower and keep getting lower, and finally it got to the point where I'd overdosed twice, and I should have been dead, but I was alive. I don't know how I woke back up, but yes, I mean, it's just kind of like, obviously, if I was overdosed twice and supposed to be dead, obviously God has a purpose for me here on earth, but obviously I wasn't ready to go, so.
So how would you classify your transformation? What are you doing now?
I work a lot. Keep myself away from people that would pull me in that direction, or somebody that I see as a negative influence, or somebody that starts doing things that I feel like aren't something that's going to pull out the better part of me or make me the best version of myself. I weed those people out of my life. Whereas before, I was just wanting to meet any and everybody. Um, and I think that comes with just growing up, your age, coming of age, that kind of thing. I don't think it's because, I mean, whenever I was 18, I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, where I was going, what my goals were. I was just kind of like flying by the seat of my pants. And I think now that, like, I'm 26, I kind of have a better understanding of who I am and what I want, where I want to go with my life, and I kind of take it one day at a time, but then also you have like a long-term goal, like 5 to 10 year plan or whatever.
Oh, that's awesome. I would imagine that being closer to family. They're still here, I'm assuming.
Well, that's why I moved back. I mean, the main reason I moved back was because of rehab. I had gotten to such a low that I, was in just a really bad spot. But also, my sister's about to have a baby. That's the first time I'll be an uncle. My parents were grandkids, so I moved all the way back.
Well, family will help you through any troubled time, and that's why I guess God gives us that. We're going to be right back, and when we come back, we're going to check in with Laura McKinley and see how she was transformed by trouble. Welcome back to Refreshing Viewpoints. I'm your host, Sharon Sellers Clark, and your panel, Daniel Kunkel and Laura McKinley. Before, when we left the first segment, we ended with Daniel's story, and now we're going to focus in on Laura, and Laura's going to tell us how she was transformed by trouble during the banking crisis.
Well, as I mentioned, I have been in the banking industry about 30 years. During that time, I started 3 startup community banks. So most of my history in banking had been in the community bank environment, where you spend a lot of time building relationships with customers, helping create jobs, and that kind of thing. I did spend a little bit of time in some bigger institutions, over $1 billion, but the majority of my career was spent in community banking. So when the financial institution downturn really hit the hardest was, I'm sure most of you heard the term too big to fail and the bailout and all of that kind of thing. Well, the community banks were the hardest hit. And so the bank I was the president of was taken over by the FDIC, and it was sold to a bigger bank. And I, of course, lost my job. Losing my job was, of course, a personal hardship, and the environment was so difficult at the time. I had to start a job to get a job at that time, and then about a year later I was able to go into the credit union industry. But the other thing that through that process that was equally difficult was watching an industry that I had spent most of my life in see it completely dismantled, and see the families of all the customers also going through the same thing that I was going through, where, I mean, and jobs were being lost, so much so that even now, the college professor, economics professor, Don Matthews, has produced a report that, in my opinion, reflects some of what has happened in that banking industry and how it has impacted Brunswick. So just going through that, it's interesting in listening to Daniel. I also was raised in a very Christian home, and you go back to those foundational values. And truly, my faith was one of the things that helped me get through that personally. But the transforming part for me also was that it kind of lit a fire again in me, and what was really important to our communities, and the community banking in and of itself help create jobs, and how important it is to try to get the word out that that is still something that's important here. And so I'm pursuing that now through the credit union industry, and through just doing things in the community to try to help small business get going.
So, in essence, it helped you continue on your path, but just in a different avenue, a different setting. How's it different?
It kind of brought me back to my true north, so to speak.
Okay.
Over the 30 years in banking, banking had grown, and I had changed, and perspectives had changed, and regulation had just gotten more and more and more, and you get so bogged down in the regulation of it that you kind of forget your original purpose. And my original interest in banking was working with people, developing relationships, seeing them achieve their goals, and a lot of that is forming businesses, creating jobs, realizing success, creating commerce in the community, creating growth in the community. I mean, literally in every community where we started banks, you could literally see the economic growth kind of proliferate right there in that environment. And if you go back and look now at the communities that lost the most community banks, those communities are a lot of the most hardest hit communities in terms of job loss and that kind of thing. So it kind of just brought me back to what originally attracted me to that industry.
Okay. So you are able now to, again, help build the communities. Do you feel like the loss of your job and seeing the other people lose their jobs, that has put a fire in you, that kind of you want to make sure that we can get back what we had, kind of thing?
Yes. Now, I don't know, with so much that has transpired in the regulatory industry, I don't know that we can go back. But I think what we have to do is look. The other thing that trouble makes you do is you look for new paths. You have to find a way through that trouble. And so, and we want to keep going forward. You don't want to go back, because as great as it was behind us, and I think Daniel would agree. I mean, he had a great job, he had a car, somebody paying his bills, and everything was great. But some of the things that led to that downturn need to be addressed. And but the good part, I guess you'd say, the creation of jobs, the realizing your life's dream of building a company, all of those kind of things are values that you do want to carry into the future. You just have to find another path to get to them.
So, okay, in the loss of your job, though, how did that affect you internally? How did you see yourself?
It was traumatic. I mean, I lost my job, I lost my house, I had every creditor I had was pursuing me. It was, and a lot of that takes years and years. I mean, I'm just working through most of that now.
So I'm going to ask you, how do you get back into, because so many people were affected that way, where they lost jobs, lost houses, credit is ruined. How do you build that back? Because it's almost like you can't do anything without credit, but you can't do anything without cash, and you can't get the cash unless you have the credit. It's just like this.
Well, and part of the problem with our financial industry right now is that, because even though the way the regulatory industry dealt with this created a tremendous amount of hardship. For example, veterans. You heard a lot about veterans not being able to get access to health care, their bills aren't being paid, this kind of thing. Well, their credit score is going to be low, where they may pay all their bills, but because their medical bills aren't being paid, that person is going to be considered a bad credit risk. So that will impact their ability to get a credit card, to get a car, to buy a house, all these different things. And so they lose access.
Okay.
They lose access. And so that's one of the challenges that have come out of this trouble that really has not been addressed yet in the industry.
Well, today you've met our panel, and I hope you will tune in again. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, let us know what topics you would like us to discuss, and join us next week for Refreshing Viewpoints.